came in and sat over there, and then I was booted because they said Anna would be sitting there. So then you were pretty much stuck. But whatever, you go to war with the show you've got.
I don't like moving around the table. I like this spot.
Oh, you guys both like that spot? That's how it works?
Do you like this spot?
I just normally sit over there. I don't know. But turns out that regardless of where we're sitting, the news stays the same. There is a lot of news today. So we're going to give you the latest update on the Senate version of the tax bill, some of the biggest changes there, and they are extremely significant this time around. Let's see. We've got some good news coming out of Australia. And then the initial rumblings of what I think will, in a month or 6 months or a year, be the biggest news, and that is what's starting to come out about sexual harassment and assault, not in Hollywood, but in Washington, D.C., inside of government. And so we're going to have some of that for you as well. But we start off with the big story of the day, and that is taxes. Last week's Senate tax bill was bad for a number of reasons that we broke down day by day as the week went by, but they reconvened over the weekend and found a way to make it even worse. Now, it's not enough that they're going to funnel trillions of dollars into the pockets of millionaires and billionaires and big corporations. They also want to kick potentially more than 10 million people off their health insurance to pay for it. Let's talk about some of these changes. The bill's tax cuts and benefits for individual Americans would almost all sunset by December 31st, 2025. So whatever you see about the potential tax cuts that you might get, which are almost surely going to be very small in comparison to the wealthiest Americans, those will last for a time and then will be gone. That includes the increased child tax credit, which is going from $1,000 to $2,000, the doubled standard deduction, the estate tax cut, which affects one of you in the audience, maybe, repeal of the alternative minimum tax, and even the tax break for pass-through business income. That last part's actually kind of a good thing, but it's going to be swamped by the rest. The bill also permanently eliminates the individual mandate that penalizes people for not having health insurance. Now, this is going to split some people because the individual mandate has long been the least popular part of the entire ACA, for conservatives for one reason, for liberals for another reason. But there are reasons it's there. Maybe we'll get into them. And understand that for whatever opposition we might have to it, getting rid of it does actually have an effect in the real world, with the CBO estimating that 13 million people would lose their health insurance, including 8 million on the private marketplaces and 5 million in Medicaid. Now, some people dispute those numbers, say that it would probably be lower, but regardless, we are talking about millions and millions of Americans losing their health insurance to try to make this tax plan seem a little bit more palatable.
And for anyone who isn't concerned about the 13 million people who would lose their health insurance under this plan, there's also the issue of premiums going up for everyone. Because the whole idea of the mandate is to get healthy people, essentially force healthy people with, this fine to buy insurance, and they subsidize for the more costly individuals who need to get the procedures necessary to stay alive. And so when you don't give people an incentive to buy insurance, healthy people to buy insurance, they're probably not going to. Premiums will go up.
So these are the same conversations and arguments we've been having about the healthcare bill, about repealing and replacing Obamacare for the past however many years. And then even for the past year since Trump has been in office, when they said, okay, first thing we're going to do is repeal and replace Obamacare, or just repeal, or just skinny repeal, or skinny replace, all the different things they kept trying to do. Once they failed multiple times, they said, oh, I have an idea. Let's just do it with the tax bill, because the tax bill is going to go through easily because every Republican wants that. That's where we are now.
Exactly.
So they think we've been hearing about it so much, and it's true. So many Americans will be like, oh yeah, no, yeah, Obamacare's bad. Yeah, individual mandate bad. Oh yeah, premiums up. Oh yeah, marketplace. Oh yeah, screw those poor people. I'm one of those poor people. Okay, screw them anyway.
Yeah.
And then let's move on to the next thing. And then do what? Not give tax breaks to those same people, but give tax breaks to the very top.
Yeah.
But they want that to continue to be muddied.
And in the end, by the mid-2020s, under this current plan, after we've given all this money to the wealthiest Americans, after we've taken the health insurance away from over 10 million Americans, most Americans at that point will actually see their taxes being higher than they are today because of the way that this is structured. Now, overall, the most important component of this is that change to the individual mandate. Like I said, it's not popular. It's not popular for Republicans. It's not popular for Democrats either. As many people point out, it originated from a conservative think tank, which is certainly an interesting historical footnote, but it is one of the three components of the ACA that has allowed it to work and that has done a great amount of good. Many people have had health insurance. They haven't gone bankrupt. They haven't died. They haven't dwelled with chronic conditions being untreated because of something that we kind of dislike. At the end of the day, all of it sucks in comparison to Medicare for all, I should say, or some sort of single payer. But because we have Donald Trump as president, we ain't getting that for several years, maybe for another 7 years. So for now, we need to protect people. This is not just designed to kick them off health insurance. It's also designed to create a ripple effect that eventually will bring down the entire system.
Just the term that people always say, kicking the can down the road, we're going to push it back later, and all these things when it comes to politicians and legislation. So again, you mentioned the 2025 when these things would sunset and it would change again.
Yeah.
These are all temporary bandages to put on something right now so they can get their severe tax cuts for the people who fund them their entire lives and their entire careers. So when someone may read, oh, it sunsets in 2025, you don't think, you think that's so far away, but it doesn't matter how far away it is. That's 7 years basically away, and now you're thinking, oh, what's okay? It's 7 years away. By then, I'm going to be rich because they keep telling me how if I just wait longer, I'm going to get rich.
Yeah.
These people who I've given all of my money to are going to give it all back to me in abundance just because they love me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, so many people who've been through this before, that we've seen these battles over tax cuts would say, okay, so they're saying it's going to sunset in 2025, but they never actually do that. In the end, they always just make them permanent at the end. So maybe my taxes wouldn't go up. Well, that's true, but if they make them permanent, then that also means that this is going to cost far, far more for the deficits and the national debt than they say. And all they're really doing is some sort of financial jujitsu to fool you into thinking that it won't cost more than $1.5 trillion so they can get it through the Senate with only 51 votes rather than 60. It's all just a shell game, and you get screwed regardless of which shell you actually choose.
It's amazing how the first thing they go for when it comes to saving money is any type of deduction or any type of tax benefit that helps the middle class or the working class, right? Because when they're talking about some of these tax breaks sunsetting after 10 years, they're the types of tax breaks that help us. And so that's exactly what you're talking about when you say our taxes are eventually going to go up. And by the way, I don't think they're going to make it permanent. You think Republicans in Congress will
I'm just saying it's bad either way.
It is bad. You're right. It's bad either way. And, I just want to quickly comment about how, I know it's frustrating to see what's happening at this moment, but there's a very clear reason that this is happening, and it's because we did not have a Democratic Party under the Obama administration that fought hard enough for a single-payer program. Obama campaigned saying that he did not like the idea of a mandate, right? Because, by the way, it was a conservative idea from the Heritage Foundation. It was implemented by Romney in Massachusetts. So I just think back at the so-called blue dog Democrats, and I think back at, at least it appeared that Obama easily caved on the notion of a single-payer healthcare program in the U.S. And that's why we're having this ridiculous debate years and years later, and I've seen no end in sight. That's frustrating to say the least.
Well, and also that sort of frustration that you have should be a warning to everyone. Like, even if we think, okay, we're gonna get Medicare for all, it's gonna be awesome. It would be awesome. Let's say we fight, and in 4 years or in 8 years, we get a president. He fights for a year, and then we get it. Everybody's thinking like, oh, then we've won. No, after the ACA, they fight you. They fight you for fucking decades. After Roe v. Wade, they fight you. They fight you for decades. After the Great Society, after all those you don't just win. You win, and then you fight to maintain your winning. So even once we get Medicare for all, there are going to be attempts to undermine it, attempts to repeal it for the rest of your lives and possibly the lives of your children. So buckle up, even if we win on that issue.
Now, why is that? Because the people that don't
because we have a government where power goes back and forth.
And the people that don't want it, that don't benefit financially directly from these types of things happening for them, are paying our politicians to keep fighting it.
Oh, yeah, totally.
No one is funding them to keep fighting actual help for Americans, or what, honestly, not even help. I hate saying things like the help or the entitlements, which is not a bad word. The reason it's an entitlement is because it's what you deserve, it's what you paid for. If I go to the store and I spend $100 on groceries, I expect to get my $100 worth of groceries. I'm not entitled if I only get a couple loaves of bread and some eggs. Should I pay for all of that? We pay for this.
No. But okay, you're right. But the propaganda that essentially, defames people for wanting to take advantage of the benefits that they've paid into. It is seeping so deeply into the minds of some Americans. Just yesterday, I was listening to a conservative radio station, and a caller called in and was like irate over the notion that people get tax breaks for their kids, right? And he's like, what are they going to do with that money? They're going to squander it anyway. First of all, how do you know that? Secondly, it's their money. It's their money. They worked for it. It's not your money. It's their income, you idiot.
What if they just spend it on their stupid kids, though?
They're going to squander it. First of all, it's their money. It's their money. I love how we're having conversations about the only tax deductions or the tax breaks that help the middle class and the working class.
So, and related to that, actually, one of the ways, in effect, this is going to help to subsidize those gigantic corporate tax cuts is that something like $300 billion will be, in effect, pulled away from Medicaid, another program that we won on literally decades ago. We still have to fight constantly to defend.
This is what we're saying. Good thing.
Okay, there's some important updates that we have to get to.
The good thing, though, is that with this, at least the corporate tax rate, they're trying to drop from 25 to 30. That's going to sunset too, right, John?
No, that's permanent. Unfortunately, that one is permanent. And again, they're making these changes to pass through business income and stuff like that. That's something to keep an eye on. But let's talk about the chances of it passing. Never let your guard down when it comes to something like this. This is one of their chief priorities. I am shocked that they didn't try to pass it in the first month. But they really want to get this done. And so to do that, they need, to pass it in the Senate, not with a filibuster-proof ratio because of the financial wizardry they're doing here. But they do need a majority. And so some senators are now coming out and saying they're not going to vote for it, or they might not vote for it. The first is a no, as of right now. That's Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican of Wisconsin, saying he won't support the tax package because it, quote, unfairly benefits corporations over other businesses and finds the bill's process, quote, offensive. He also wants more benefits for pass-through businesses that would benefit people like Donald Trump. So I could take issue with some of his reasons for opposing it, but as of right now, he's opposing it. It's the sort of thing that they can come out with draft number 3 and maybe win him back, which is the scary part. But right now, he's a no vote. We also have Susan Collins, who says that she had said she wants to get rid of the individual mandate and the ACA and all that. She also wants tax reform, but I believe taking a particular provision from the ACA and appending it to the tax bill greatly complicates our efforts. One of my concerns is it will cause premiums in the individual markets to go up as healthier, younger people drop out. Because that is what would happen, and that's what's intended to happen, so that it would take down the whole thing. It's true. But she hasn't said she won't vote for it, but she is leaning against it, and Ron Johnson said no. Those are currently, as far as I know, the only no's. There's a guy in the House I saw, but that's less consequential than in the Senate. So that's something, but as of right now, I mean, for all we know, we could come back at any point and launch this show and say that overnight they passed it. They're trying to get it done. They originally said by Thanksgiving. Now, apparently, they're trying to do it by sometime in December. I know that with the Roy Moore scandal going on, which we're going to give you more information on in the latter part of the show, they're worried about how that will affect their chances of passing it, and so now they're trying to push it up even sooner. So we're talking about the next couple of weeks. That is the critical period.
They're just setting up the country so corporations can trickle on us. We just gotta wait for that. We gotta wait for that trickle.
Just like, wow, I just want some trickle. Okay. I think it's a form of torture, actually, and it feels like it.
Yeah.
From sitting at this desk. Okay, that was the first big story. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we've got some international news, some news coming out of China, also out of Australia. Don't go anywhere.
I'm super excited because we have different levels of members. They pay $10 a month, but there are some members that pay a little more. Executive producers, for instance. My favorite thing about executive producers is that we have quarterly calls with them. I love that I'm getting a little transparency and I'm knowing what you guys like and dislike, ideas on how to improve the show, topics that maybe we haven't heard of yet and you really want us to cover. We have so much respect for you because of the fact that you keep us independent and allow us to be uncensored, unfiltered, without worrying about corporate sponsors breathing down our necks and telling telling us what we can and can't say. So if you want to be a member, obviously no pressure. You can go ahead and join by going to tytnetwork.com/join. I'm going to ask some uncomfortable questions. The first topic that I said that we would discuss a little more is masturbation.
And then I was swimming in a hazelnut river.
Are you sure you're not doing mushrooms? Oh my god, I can achieve an orgasm by myself.
Fuck that, I am going to talk about it, because there should be no shame. I think a lot about that, because I love life.
That openness led to amazing.
And I keep saying to everybody, oh, I got to go call my wife. I figured that was a good excuse, so people can't say, hey, don't call your wife. I'm going to release listen.
It's so weird, because at that moment I felt this, and it smelled like lavender.
At the end, you get to do a check. Nice job. If you're after the young person, you too will rock the world.
back to the Young Turks. A little bit of technical problems there, but we're back. And was there a tweet you wanted to read? I know you got Twitter out now. Are you just rudely interrupting the show, or did you want to use it?
This is part of the fun. A little bit of both, by the way.
Okay.
From Dr. R. Win Olival. I don't know if this is a real person. Could be a Russian bot. The tax plan is outright theft. At least John Iadarola is looking scrupulicious.
What does that have to do with the tax plan? Thank you.
Scrupulicious.
I just like the term.
Actually, I shaved a little bit today. Anyway, we're going to move on to the rest of the news. Okay. The 3 UCLA basketball players who were facing up to a decade in a Chinese prison after shoplifting have actually now been released, and it's apparently, at least in part, and thanks to Donald Trump, who wants a very particular type of credit for this development. He tweeted this. That's not the right tweet. Okay, so he said in effect that he
tweet about the UCLA kids.
You have it?
Yeah,
Let's read it.
It was. Do you think 3?
That's not it.
That's not that one. Do you think the 3 UCLA players will say thank you, President Trump? They were headed for 10 years in jail! Exclamation point.
There. So, let's say he did it. It seems like he did it. It's within his power to do it. It's the sort of thing you'd expect the president to do. He could say, was glad to be able to help out the players. But in this, he's saying, you think I'll get a thank you?
Yeah, the crazy thing is, I know that we're very critical of Trump, but I don't think that we're critical needlessly. Like, we're critical when it matters. So when he actually did intervene, and then it was reported yesterday that the players would be released and sent back home to the U.S., I thought to myself, okay, good, Trump did something.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now let's see if he can ruin it.
And then he ruins it.
Yes.
He ruins it. Just let it go. He's such a thin-skinned, egotistical maniac. Just let it go.
So he tweeted that. So we want to show what the students actually said in their press conference. And then we'll break down why he might have predicted that he might not get a thank you. So let's jump to video 2 here. You're going to see the press conference of some of the students now saying what had happened in their ordeal.
To President Trump and the United States government, thank you for taking the time to intervene on our behalf. We really appreciate you helping us out.
I would also like to thank President Trump and the United States government for the help that they provided as well.
Thank you to the Pac-12 and the whole UCLA community that helped us the whole way. And thank you to the United States government and President Trump for your efforts to bring us home.
So you asked for it, you get it. Now, is everyone happy now? Does that change anything? Does it make you feel better? Oh, my president got his props from written statements from college kids who went over, and they did admit, by the way, in that press conference that they did shoplift.
Yeah.
So it was, and then, because that was, I think, some of the questions was whether or not they were targeted and wrongfully accused and all that stuff. So they did. They all admitted that they took part in it. And so, oh my God, he got his apology. And I tweeted this earlier. Oh, so when is President Trump gonna? We're waiting. I'm demanding you're welcome to these thankful students who bowed their heads and made sure they said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. President." Yeah. Like, is this useful? Does this do anything for you except for humiliate these 3 guys?
So why, in the first place, rather than simply waiting to see what they said, why did he come out and say, I'm probably not going to get it, thank you? Why is that?
I know why.
We know. Okay, well, why? Why, JR? Why?
Because
Go ahead.
Well, first off, he wants to be put on notice that he's the shit. When am I going to get some attention, some kind of respect? Somebody's got to talk about things I've done. This is a win for me.
I was about to give you some respect in regard to this story until you went off and acted like a child, a freaking child on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just, it's amazing. He's like completely unaware of how to behave like an adult. Seriously, again, for the billionth time, I was super supportive of how this all went down until he tweeted that.
Yeah, and so look, we got to acknowledge that he rallied his supporters to his side just a couple of months ago with the NFL issue, trying to turn the American public against people who are trying to draw just a little bit of notice to some of their extremely long-standing racial grievances against the justice system in the U.S., against police and those sorts of things. And they loved that. They ate that up, the Trump fans. And so now you have some more athletes. I noticed they weren't all white, and for some reason he automatically assumes that they're not going to credit him with helping them out. And I didn't pull the tweets or anything like that, but you had given me tweets when Fox reported on this. There were tweets about these damn thugs, they're entitled, all that stuff. And so this is again an attempt. And of course, the kids did. They did credit him. You could have simply waited a few minutes.
No.
Maybe it was hard for them to say something because they were in a Chinese prison and then on an international flight.
Just
Right,
got back last
that's
and then
right.
as soon as they get back, they do it.
Yeah, he didn't even really give them an opportunity to, say thank you. Considering that it was just announced yesterday that they would be released, and then you're right, that international flight, you don't even have Wi-Fi on a lot of those flights.
Exactly. Or you gotta pay extra.
If they don't, who gives a damn?
Yeah,
they had to get home.
Yeah.
That's the most important point. Homeboy hasn't had any legislative wins. He hasn't succeeded in anything other than naming a Supreme Court justice, right? And he's this is a story we're going to do in hour 2, but he's going to foreign countries begging them to buy our weapons so he can show the world that he's doing something.
Yeah.
As if American voters are like, I'd really feel better about my life if we were selling more of our weapons to foreign countries.
Exactly.
But yeah, he's desperately trying to show that he's winning at something.
Yeah.
And instead of actually focusing on policy-driven, intentions, he's focusing on bullying college basketball players into giving him credit for what he did.
Yeah.
So
Now,
pathetic.
look, as we transition to some good news, I have no idea what the politics of those particular students are. They play a sport, and so you'll be shocked to find out I don't know who they are.
Probably have no politics. They're
Probably not at all.
college
But
guys.
I was thinking for myself, and so I turn this to you. How long would you be willing to be in a Chinese prison rather than be sprung by Donald Trump and you have to thank him? I'd do a week.
That's a great.
I have a
I'd do
story.
a week, I think.
I have a story. Guys,
What?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna make it really fast, as fast as possible. Wendell Brown is a former college and then semi-pro football player. Ended up playing pro over in the CFL in Europe. He went over to China to try and get a job after he had his career to coach. In 2015, he got into a fight in a bar, and this happens pretty regularly. I've heard a couple stories about it, where a local Chinese man there approached him and said, "Can I drink with you?" Wendell said no. The guy threw bottles at him, got in a fight with him. Started a fight. This guy's a large athlete, you would assume. He's a football player. He got arrested, has been in jail since, hasn't had a trial. He's been behind bar for nearly 14 months. And when these one of the things that happens in the legal system there in some aspects. So after it did happen, and no one's come to help him out, because who knows Wendell Brown? Nobody. But these 3 players from UCLA, one of them is the younger brother of LeVar Ball. Not LeVar Ball is their father. But see, I'm getting into Lonzo Ball is in the NBA. He's got a name that can bring some kind of appreciation to Trump. Do you think when Trump came in office, he decided to look through all of the cases in China from someone who's probably wrongfully accused, has been sitting in jail, hasn't had a trial, is assumed guilty right away, unless he says, "Yeah, I did it." They're gonna keep him there. This hasn't been brought up to him at all because it doesn't help him.
Yeah.
This guy, who cares? Rot. Whatever they're doing you wrong. You're an American. I really don't care. Does this benefit me? That is the reason I brought up the story is because if these guys' story didn't benefit him, which he wanted so quickly, he wouldn't give a shit about them either. This has nothing to do with trying to bring home Americans that you want to see escape maybe a faulty legal system. Nothing. It's all about himself, and so people who were mad because we're not giving him credit, he shot that all down in the first place. I don't have anything to do with this guy.
Okay, so that's some bad news. Let's turn to some good news. Every once in a while, something good does happen in the world, even in 2017.
What does it?
It does, okay? Well, we'll see. Maybe you consider this to be bad news. Feel free to articulate that. Back in August of this year, lawmakers in Australia called for a postal survey of their population, a popular referendum to see where the Australian population stood on the issue of gay marriage. Now, the results of this are technically non-binding. If, they vote in favor of gay marriage, we don't suddenly have gay marriage in Australia. But the idea was that this would actually guide action by the government, and so too much freedom because I don't think those hands can contain too much. Emily Vandermeulen saying, I want to be thanked constantly for doing my job. But again, as Anna was saying, if he just did it, and that's it, people would give him credit. I wouldn't. I refuse to, but most reasonable people would. It was just that he ruined it after the fact. Danger Carlos Danger said, I have seen cats trapped in things that are less pathetic than Trump. Sad. Ruth Iverson with a great point. I can't believe Australia didn't have gay marriage yet.
Yeah.
I would have totally guessed that they had gay marriage. And Victoria Ann Brown said, thank you for covering the marriage equality result. Finally, some good news coming out of our country. Yes, and Australia has had some bad news recently, especially in regard to their treatment of some of the refugees attempting to come into Australia over the past year. That has been a rough situation. So this is a good development. With that, let's jump back in the news. Washington, D.C. could join Hollywood as the next site of potentially multiple sexual assault and sexual harassment charges. Today, the House held a sexual harassment committee meeting where people came forward and talked about their experience, either as representative senators, also as interns, people staffing for many of the offices in D.C. And some of those experiences are scary on their own, but could certainly come with some legal charges in the near future, perhaps. Here is a mashup of those stories.
That when I was a freshman legislator in my 20s in Missouri, as a member of the House of Representatives, I went up on the dais to ask the Speaker of the House for advice on how to get my first bill out of committee, and he asked me if I brought my knee pads. That's one example.
This is about a member who's here now. I don't know who it is, but somebody who I trust told me this situation. This member asked a staffer to bring them over some materials to their residence, and the young staffer, as a young woman, went there and was greeted with a member in a towel, was a male, who then invited her in. At that point, he decided to expose himself. She left, and then she quit her job. She left, she found another job.
Yeah, I mean, when I was an intern, I learned to avoid elevators because elevators were when you were captured. And so after one unfortunate incident in the elevator, I began taking the stairs everywhere I went in the state capitol and when I was there as a college student.
I was eager to present a proposal to him that I'd been working on, and I did so in his office. It was just he and I. And as I got up to leave, he stopped me and said, my God, you just look amazing today. Just really stunning. Would you mind twirling for me?
Twirling, like spinning round in a circle.
Yes, I had a dress suit on at the time, and I was stunned that I was 22 years old. I was inexperienced, and I respected him. He was my member. He was doing a lot of good work in Congress, and I complied. I didn't know what else to do. I was confused after the incident. I went to sit down at my desk and just kind of regroup when shortly thereafter I received a phone call from our Washington office saying, well, Rebecca, congratulations. I don't know what you did, but Gary called and said that you needed to have a bonus immediately. And I was so furious at the time because I knew exactly what I did. I twirled.
In fact, there are two members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, right now, who serve, who have been subject to review, or not have been subject to review, but have engaged in sexual harassment. These harasser propositions such as, are you going to be a good girl? To perpetrators exposing their genitals, to victims having their private parts grabbed on the House floor.
And so Jackie Spear, right there at the end, also said that when she was just starting her career in politics, the chief of staff in her office sexually assaulted her. And so it feels to me, and I think to a lot of people, like this is just the beginning. Like we know that what leads to this sort of behavior is unbridled power. And Hollywood had that. It had the culture that protected these people and allowed this sort of thing to go on. And we know that stuff like this happens in D.C. And, I mean, these are not simply like, hey, something happened decades ago. People currently serving have sexually harassed and assaulted people. And I think that this is the moment where this sort of thing could come out, and I would not be surprised that, and there's precedent for this, like Packwood back in the 90s, that people lose their careers, understandably, justifiably so, because of what they have done once people start coming forward. For all we know, there are reporters compiling these stories into bombshell reports that in a week or a month or a year are going to take down people.
Look, I have
and DC needs it.
I have no doubt that the identities of the people that were recently accused will somehow be leaked. We'll figure it out, right? But this is something that's been going on in our current Congress that apparently some members of Congress have known about. And just think about how deeply rooted fear is when it comes to identifying these individuals. Now, I'm not criticizing them for not wanting to come forward and identify them. That is their decision to make, right? But at the same time, it's so important to hold them accountable and call them out, because if you don't, then the behavior continues. They think that they can continuously victimize other people without any consequences because they recognize their power and they recognize the fear that others have in identifying who they are. So again, I've said this a billion times when it comes to all of these sexual assault stories that have been coming out. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. Their political ideology is completely irrelevant to me when it comes to this type of predatory behavior.
Yeah. It's the setup, it's the makeup of the system.
Yeah.
So of course, again, and there's a lot of similarities between Hollywood and DC. When I was there the first couple of times I went, and I had friends that worked, it was during the W's administration, and she was like, "Oh yeah, politicians around here, it's like Hollywood." She went to school with me out here in LA, so she had a direct comparison. And she goes, "They're like celebrities when they're approached or when they're recognized out somewhere. They're like, yeah, you know who I am." The same way you'd see a celebrity maybe, and then they take it in, but then they look around like, I'm so much of this. So when they know they have power over certain people and they wield it, there's similarities to just human nature that people like to do, asshole human nature, in taking advantage of people to get their rocks off whichever way they'd like to, and they've been getting away with it since forever, obviously, and this is what's going to finally change it. The system allowed it to happen, so people who were victims of it, I mean, the woman was Rebecca Weir, and then she felt horrible about it was a normal thing that just happens, and then she's like, suddenly she has a bonus, and then at the end of that, she also said, and I needed it. So everyone knows that they barely pay folks, then they use them for their own gratification, and the system just keeps moving.
Yeah, and we know, I mean, one of the reasons that initially there wasn't much done about the allegations of those in Hollywood is because there's huge sums of money on the line. Like, Harvey Weinstein's power isn't like a physical power, it's a financial and influence power. And every one of those people that were alluded to in the video you just saw, they have not only the power theoretically over people's careers, like Harvey Weinstein and some of the other people accused do, but they have literal government power, influence over those in the executive branch. I mean, the people coming out and accusing Roy Moore said that they didn't want to come forward because he was the DA, he was a judge, he was influential. Think about a senator, think about a representative, and there will be defenders of them the same way there are still defenders of Roy Moore, because a lot of people will say, sure, I would love it if people weren't getting sexually assaulted, but I gotta have my majority in Congress, and I'm not gonna jeopardize that just to stand by my supposed principles. And so as more of these stories come out, and I really hope that reporters are digging into it, expect that the defenders will be there, and everybody who comes out and makes allegations is putting everything on the line for it, because just like with Roy Moore, they will stop at nothing to destroy you.
And as what Anna said, Republican, Democrat. So everyone else watching, be prepared to be disappointed. And if you're right, and these names will come out more, be prepared to be disappointed in some of the names you will hear. There can be representatives, there can be senators, there can be people that you liked, things that you like, what they've done and legislated, but they still, many, as we're hearing, have done this stuff. So be prepared and don't be ready to defend them just because you like them, what they seem to be.
And it's likely to be from both Republicans and Democrats. So anyway, we'll look forward to that in the near future. Let's jump to a related story. We've sort of alluded to this a couple times through that discussion. Today, Donald Trump refused to comment on the increasing number of sexual assault allegations against Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore. His daughter, Ivanka, did say that there's a special place in hell for those who prey on the young, which is going to make for awkward Thanksgiving conversation with her father. But despite that, Sean Hannity is sort of backing off a little bit. Breitbart had been wavering. Now it looks like they're going to still defend him. So he does still have his defenders, even as more and more people come out. Their defense strategy, though, is getting a little bit weird, and this is going to be an example of that. Here is one of Roy Moore's lawyers speaking on mainstream media.
Why would he need permission from any of these girls' mothers if they weren't underage?
Sure, that's a good question. And culturally speaking, I would say there's differences. I looked up Allie's background there. Wow, that's awesome that you have got such a diverse background. It's really cool to read through that. But the point is this.
What does Allie's background have to do with dating a 14-year-old?
I'm not finished with the context of it.
Well, please answer. What does Allie Velshey's background have to do with dating children, 14-year-old girls?
Sure. In other countries, there's arrangement through parents for what we would refer to as consensual marriage. So
Allie's from Canada.
I understand that. And Allie's also spent time in other countries.
So have I.
Y'all too. So it's not a bad thing.
I don't know where you're going with this,
Stephanie, to answer.
Most people didn't know where he was going with that. But we have a feeling, we don't know where it's going, but it's racism adjacent. We know that much.
Oh my God, she was so good in that video. She's so good. I love seeing.
That's his lawyer.
I know, that's his lawyer, and I love how quickly she put a stop to it. Allie Welsh's like, you go. I'm just gonna sit here.
The idea, I guess, is that because one of the reporters he's talking to has a background, not even a background literally, but just he thinks he can read into his face or whatever, that he's got sort of a background of those sorts, that makes it okay for Roy Moore to do what he did. But you don't approve of what those other countries do. So how is that a defense of your candidate?
He sounds like he's going to be a great lawyer.
Oh my God.
Looking forward to hearing his argument.
This, I guess, is the best money can buy. So
he's from Canada. Yeah, but he's been in other countries. So have I. So good.
Yeah, she did a great job there.
So, because I point out the difference, like, I'm this white lady, so am I. So am I in this too? And he's like, sure. He says, yeah, sure. Well, what I'm saying is like, let me answer the question like I tried not to do a second ago.
Yeah. And now, look, this isn't just that one video. More is coming out all the time. Like, we have to decide what we can include and what we can't include. So, we had that letter that Roy Moore's wife presented. It was like 53 pastors pledging support for him. That letter was actually written before all of this scandal. It had nothing to do with the scandal, and now those pastors are like, what are you talking about? Take me off that list. I don't support it. It was all just a big lie. It was just a big lie. Today, by the way, a sixth accuser has come forward. This is Tina Johnson. Thankfully, she was of legal age, so maybe he'll be able to skirt this one. She alleges that a then-married Roy Moore grabbed her butt while she was in his law office in 1991. She was 28 at that point. She had come in with her mother. He, again, and this is similar to other stories, waited for her mother to leave, and then as she went to leave, he came up and grabbed her. And she said it wasn't a pinch, it was a grab. She said this is not a politics thing, it's more of a moral or religious thing. She said she was just so sick of seeing him on TV talking about his faith and religion for all these years. But that is a sixth person.
In this case, she was 28, you said?
She was 28 at that point.
So his attorney's going to come on TV tomorrow and go, well, at least she was 28 years old. He grabbed the butt of a woman that was 28. She wasn't 16.
Yeah.
What about that, you guys?
And apparently, in this case, he also told her that he routinely dates younger women. I don't know why that's a thing that he's bragging about when he's talking to women, but that happened. They had a press conference today where the attorney refused to really talk about whether he'd done any of this stuff, and instead focused on how they want the yearbook, the signed yearbook that shows he knew one of the accusers, even though he says he never met her. And then there's other information. So we had found out previously that he was banned from a mall, which is a great sign. This was written by Glenn Wilson in the New American Journal, saying, sources tell me Moore was actually banned both from that mall and the YMCA for his inappropriate behavior of soliciting sex from young girls. And coming out of the New York Times, reported by Jess Bidgood and Richard Fawcett, saying Mrs. Abney, one of the accusers, said she recalled Mr. Moore being a regular presence in the mid-1980s at the YMCA. There she said he was off. I apologize, she was not one of the accusers, she was an employee at the YMCA at that point. There she said he was often talking to much younger women that appeared to be high school on up in an exercise class. I'm not saying he was trying to pick them up, it just did not look appropriate. And so this is a guy who's hanging around high schools, hanging around malls, hanging around YMCAs, bragging to people left and right that he dates younger women. That seems like trouble. If we can bring up this final graphic, you're going to see here, they're going to try to say that if they can just get their hands on the yearbook, they can prove that it's not his signature. That's his signature on top, and that looks suspiciously like his signature down below. Man, his signature really hasn't changed in decades, has it?
Well, kind of.
But in any event, this is not looking good for him at this point.
It's amazing that he remains defiant. But, you know, the allegations keep mounting. More and more residents of Alabama who knew him are speaking up. And I'm glad that people are feeling emboldened enough to at least share their perspective of their experiences with him, whether they were, preyed upon by him or just we knew that, you know, there was this big open secret that no one ever acted on.
Yes, you guys got to wait on more information because I heard Washington Post reporter Mr. Bernstein has been looking at it.
We did hear that. Apparently, there is a fairly shady-sounding Washington Post reporter who's been calling people in Alabama to get information. Here is a recording of that call.
Hi, this is Bernie Bernstein. I'm a reporter for the Washington Post. I'm calling to find out if anyone at this address is female between the ages of 54 to 57 years old willing to make damaging remarks about candidate Roy Moore for a reward of between $5,000 to $7,000. I will not be fully investigating these claims, however, we will make a written report. I can be reached by email lbernstein@WashingtonPost.com. Thank you.
Pathetic.
That was really a robocall that was being made to people in Alabama. Bernie Bernstein is not a Washington Post reporter, but isn't that just perfect right there to encapsulate everything? You can't trust the media because they're paying off people to lie. We're not going to fully investigate this. That's what a reporter would say in that call. And his name is Bernie Bernstein. In case you had forgotten the racism and anti-Semitism at the core of this movement.
So Roy Moore's defense, with all of these allegations being lodged against him, is that the libs and the establishment Republicans are paying people to say these things about him, right? And then immediately there's this fake Washington Post reporter named Bernie Bernstein, offering money for fake statements. Come on, man. He's so transparent. It's so obvious. He couldn't be more obvious.
It shows the degree of belief they have that their constituents, their voting bloc, has any level of intelligence. We'll call him Bernie Bernstein. We'll have this weird cartoonish Jewy voice.
And also, they're assuming our supporters are anti-Semitic. We can use that.
Yeah, we can use it because we are too. We link up with how they think. And there's no way they're going to actually email because maybe they're not real victims. So they're not going to look up the fact that Bernie Bernstein at WashingtonPost.com isn't a real email address, which people, once this story got picked up, checked it. Obviously, it's not real. Oh, nobody's going to check this out. They're just going to hear it and go, I'm going to go and vote for Roy. They keep getting to it. Because, the first thing they said when this whole broke was people will support him. They're like, well, it's from the Washington Post. You really can't trust them because they've been told this so many times.
Exactly.
All you do is say at WashingtonPost.com and they will buy it.
And as of right now, despite the fact that there are now 6 people accusing him of various forms of sexual harassment and sexual assault, he is refusing to drop out of the race, and I saw a poll today, had him up 6 points. The NRSC put out a poll saying that he was down 12 points, but as many people have noted, there's a lot of reason for the NRSC to want to pressure him to get out, and those sorts of internal polls are usually more prone to error than regular polls even, so there's some reason to believe that's probably not accurate. It's possible we need to get more polls, but he can still win this thing, especially if they do a scorched earth campaign, convincing everyone that some sort of weird alliance of reporters and Jewish people are trying to convince them that their good, godly man is a pedophile.
Throwing shit, see if it sticks.
Exactly.
It works. And it's crazy. Washington Post, there's been 6 accused. They spent like $30,000 minimum on this.
That's a good point. That's a lot of money. Anyway, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the first hour. Thank you, as always, JR, for stepping in and joining us. Anna's going to be taking over the second hour. There's going to be much more after this break, so don't go anywhere.
No, she just gave it to me. Dry cough. Hey guys, welcome back to the Unturked. We have a completely different panel, and it's going to be awesome. It's the Female Power Hour. It is, yes. Maytha Al-Hassan and Ambria Allen join me, and I'm really glad that you ladies are here because the first story is a doozy. Obviously, you guys are aware that there's a lot going on with sexual assault allegations, both impacting the rich and powerful in Hollywood, but also now members of Congress are being accused. And it's one of the most, relevant topics. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's aware of what's going on. But there's one individual who thinks that, hey, despite the way a lot of people are feeling victimized right now, I'm going to go ahead and push these insanely misogynistic stereotypes. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. Later on in the show, we're also going to talk about what Trump is doing to boost his approval ratings. It has a lot to do with trying to sell weapons to foreign countries. I don't know how that helps boost your approval ratings among Americans, but we'll talk about that. And then later on, we will also discuss the first ever digital pill that has been approved by the FDA. What is it? There are some privacy concerns, so we'll dig deep in that story. So you guys ready? All right, let's do it. Gene Simmons, who was the bassist for Kiss, is not a delightful individual. That has already been established. But he has further proven that point with his latest book and comments that he made about women to the New York Post while he was promoting his book. Now, the comments that have some people raising their eyebrows go as follows. He said, "Women have a choice. They can dress in a potato sack or in potato sacks, but as soon as they pretty themselves up with lipstick, lift and separate them and point them in our general direction, they're going to get a response. Guys are jackasses. We will buy them mansions and houses all because of sex." So let me give you more context about, why he made that statement. His new book has to do with becoming powerful, using the power you have, wielding the power you have. And his argument is women are powerful because they can manipulate people using their sexuality. If they're attractive enough, they can get whatever they want. That is the point that he's trying to make here. He also said, in regard to women who want to have careers and raise a family, get over your biological urges. It's natural to want to have kids, but sorry, you can't have it both ways. You have to commit to either career or family. It's very difficult to have both. Okay, so there is a follow-up to all of this, but I want to open it up to you guys.
This is like the apex of mansplaining, if I've ever seen it. And it's also not a new concept or a new argument. There was a book that came out in 2011 called Erotic Capital, The Power of Attraction from the Boardroom to the Bedroom by this woman named Catherine Hakim. And the problem with this is twofold. One is like, if you invest in the idea of erotic capital, let's just say we're following this through line, it's something you invest in that's going to depreciate in value, right? With the way that aesthetics are set up for women, like incredibly unfair. And then two, it's a double bind, which is if you are attractive, then you have to deal with the sexual harassment angle. So you really don't move forward, and if you use that capital to get something, you're getting still 70 cents on the dollar to a man's dollar.
Right. Well, I think what's also interesting is for the women who do feel comfortable wielding that power, because there's a little element of truth to what he said. I'm not going to deny it.
Right.
Yes, I do think that attractive women could use that power to get certain things, but that actually backfires significantly
all the time,
because you will be accused of not earning something based on your mind or merits. It's, oh, she must have done XYZ sexual favors, it's because she's pretty. You will be degraded and belittled and minimized for the remainder of your career.
Sure, and women who are conventionally attractive, who don't use that power, are still accused of
That's right.
Right. And it also penalizes women who are not conventionally attractive, right? So where do they fare in this logic that he's outlined? It's also interesting that the argument still maintains that men are distributing the power, right? So you can get power by getting it from us, right? We're still doling it out.
That's such a good point. Right? You can get that power if you present yourself in a way that we like.
Yeah.
That's essentially what he's saying there. And so he recently went on the Today Show. And the fine ladies of the Today Show called him out on his comments. And here's what he had to say. Take a look.
You were quoted in the New York Post as saying this. You ready? These are your words.
Yep.
Women have a choice. They can dress in potato sacks. But as soon as they pretty themselves up with lipsticks, lift and separate them, and point them in our general direction, they're going to get a response.
Blah, 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 blah. So here's the reality. I'm aware of the rules. I didn't create them. So you can try this yourself. I'm not saying life is fair. What I'm saying is the male of the species is visually stimulated. That's life. And so you have power. The power of being a female, and you can access that power to make more money.
Wait. So given the climate, given everything that's going on, you're saying that if a woman dresses the way she wants, Kath dresses the way she wants, I'm dressing the way I want, I'm not doing it to get a reaction from Dave or
we can argue about that once we get off stage. If you were on a tropical island, the chances are you probably wouldn't put on lipstick. We appreciate it. We want you to be as attractive as possible for us and for each other. So this is not politically correct conversation, folks. Dress in a potato sack.
Why?
Walk out on the street.
Why would I dress in a potato sack?
You might not. No, I'm saying you have the choice in life.
But why would I have to make that choice?
I'm not being confrontational. I'm on your side. I want women to have all the power they can have. What I'm pointing out is your looks, how you dress, how you present yourself is an outreach, an extension of the power that you have. We can't do that. Men can't do that. We have to build skyscrapers and thereby try to be more attractive to you. Your actual female self is your power. So you have a choice of implementing that power or not. That's up to you.
I mean, it's up to us, yeah. But you made a really good point, which is not only are men in this framework the purveyors of distributing power, but they are defining what power looks like. Because in this model, it's not power, it's domination. Yeah. It's that agency to be able to have power over somebody and to be able to manipulate them. So for me, I have a different definition of power, and it doesn't fit within that framework because I don't want to live by patriarchy. And at the end of the day, it's also, it's dangerous to men. I mean, this is what he was saying too. We have to build skyscrapers to be attractive to you. Who wants to live within that kind of system where we're all degraded and reduced down to either our looks or our ability to exploit people to make money?
Yeah, I like that you brought that up, because what he says isn't just insulting to women, it's also insulting to men. Because he thinks that all men are like these, like, primitive, like, apes that can't control themselves and they can't think for themselves and they have no interest in, an intelligent conversation with a woman or her talents or anything. They're only interested in seeing a woman with lipstick and makeup and with, by the way, in his original statement, he talks about lifting and separating them and pointing them in our general direction. He's talking about breasts. He's talking about women's breasts, okay? He thinks that's all men care about. That's the only thing that they ever act on. It's so incredibly, like, simplistic and insulting to both genders.
Yeah, and I mean, it assumes I'm saying women need to resist our biological urges in terms of that dichotomy between motherhood and the workplace is ridiculous. But let's talk about men's biological urges, right? Like, if we're going to talk about urges, also it presents women as only being interested in men's ability to produce capital and not actually, like, interested, right? A lot of men don't build skyscrapers. Like, let's start there. Also, women like visual stimulation. Like,
I know.
All of these, there's so many wrong things. And, his argument that, I didn't make the rules. Like, that's such a lazy argument. Like, you're complicit. And men change rules when they don't like them. So you can't just say, like, it's just, this is what it is. So this is how we gotta be. Like, y'all change stuff when it benefits you. You're benefiting from the system. So
and not only is he benefiting, I mean, he's saying I didn't write the rules. Okay, but you're reinforcing, these stereotypes, and you're profiting from it by pushing and reinforcing them in your book. It's just, he's not, again, necessarily, like, I don't think that he is illustrative of, men in general at all. But I do think that he symbolizes, like, this old school backwards way of thinking that, some people still, like, push for. I had a number of conversations with people today about this particular story. And with a lot of guys, to be specific. And, a lot of guys are on the right side, but they're like, but isn't he also being more insulting toward men because he's saying that we can't control ourselves? Yeah, but he's also saying that the number one, like, the main capital that women have is their breasts and their lipstick.
Yeah. But then does this strange, like, about face at the end of the interview where he's like, I'm on your side. I want you to have all the equality. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, the drugs and the years and the
stuck in the 1980s.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's not like a representative sample, but some of these ideas are pretty salient.
I agree. So. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have more stories for you, including Trump pushing other countries to buy U.S. weapons. And then later on in the show, we will discuss other news, including very rare consequences for a police officer who behaved poorly. So come right back.
Today is truly a historic day with the Supreme Court decision that makes same-sex marriage legal nationwide.
So this is one of those days in American history, it doesn't come along that often, where we have expanded the circle of liberty.
Look, all we try to do on this show, is to give you perspectives, right? So you can get a better understanding.
We need to change our mentality and understand why these people are trying to leave their own countries and everything that they've known, everything that they've built. It's not to come here and harm you.
Anytime you force someone, like they did in Arizona, to carry their paperwork, it's to remind them every day that they do not belong in your society. Now that
is the sound of fascism beginning here in America.
Doesn't that scare you? Don't you see history repeating itself? That xenophobia and faux populism to get people worked up to attack outsiders.
That is violent rhetoric, and your violent rhetoric translates to violent actions. If you don't get that, well, you're either in denial or you know it's true and you just don't want to admit it.
What's the message we're sending to the rest of the world? I mean, give us your poor, you're tired, and we will greatly mistreat them under horrible conditions where some of them will die. That's not what the Statue of Liberty says.
If you asked me to come up with something insulting to Latinos, I couldn't have done anything like this. I wouldn't have thought to insult their grandkids. 2/3 of people shot when they're unarmed were blacks and Latinos. That means they were wrong. They're like, who cares? Shoot them, shoot them, shoot them, shoot them.
Look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria, and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know. It makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry because I think it goes against what this country's about.
The fighters, the warriors, the ones who go the extra mile, in this case literally, to provide for their family and to look for that American dream. And they shouldn't be forced to live in an American nightmare. I saw a picture of John. I was like, look at this fucking badass Viking he met on his trip. I was like, oh wait, that's John.
Yeah.
His beard is so gross. I swear to God, I didn't recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was like a dude from up there, like a Viking-looking dude from up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, we've got our own Viking. Look at Johnny Pie. Johnny Pie, we miss you, big guy. And he was at Svalbard. We were talking about how he was going to go get the grains if he's the last person on Earth, and he's going to, or among the last people on that ship, and repopulate the Earth after North Korea. At least he's got the grains. He knows where it is. He can find it. Don't worry. Humanity will be saved. Yet again, by a white male. God, I love
Hey, Jake, what's up? Hey, my VCR keeps flashing 12, but it's not even midnight. Go.
Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian, Maytha Alhassan, and Ambria Allen here with you. I wanted to do a quick live read to give you a sense of what you can look forward to on the network. So there's a new show of Aggressive Progressives available tomorrow night. All you need to do is go to tytnetwork.com/AP, and it was hosted by Jimmy Dore, Malcolm Fleschner, and Mark Thompson. Guests include Lee Camp and Nick Brana. So you should check it out. Also, Old School returns tonight, streams live for members at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, tytnetwork.com/members live. And then a quick mention of TYT Lives for you. The Mad Lib wanted to respond to John's comments about the bitchy rich shirt. He said, that bitchy rich shirt really is dangerous. I have to plan my day around what part of town I'm going to be in when I wear that shirt out. Too strong. Also, Beth Haven says, I don't know about others, but I feel like the molestation accusations will result in little or no action other than to distract us all while the Congress screws us all on the obscene tax proposal. Beth, we are not going to be distracted. We will talk about both issues as we did on the show today. So have a little bit of faith. I hope that there will be some consequences for these predators, and we will defeat that tax bill, especially considering what they're trying to do with the Affordable Care Act. All right, let's move on to some other news. Donald Trump just finished his tour of Asia, and there were a lot of ceremonies, a lot of traditional things happened. There were a couple of leaders in Asia that were concerned that not enough policy was hashed out, not enough in terms of foreign relations was hashed out. However, there was one thing that Trump really dwelled on during his trip, and that was whether or not some of these countries would buy U.S. weapons. So Bloomberg reported on this, and I thought it was fascinating because, as we all know, Trump is planning on running for re-election, and he wants credit for achieving things. But legislatively speaking, he hasn't really accomplished anything at all. And so he tries to find these other ways of doing things that he can get credit for. And he believes that selling weapons to countries like Vietnam will somehow boost his approval ratings and get Americans to vote for him. So, according to sources who spoke to Bloomberg, sources who are familiar with these conversations that Trump had with the leader of Vietnam, he said that he needed quick wins. He told his team in the room because he'd be running for re-election before anyone realized. And weapon sales, in Trump's view, are good for his approval ratings. Trump also rarely sat down in a country without pointing out that buying a few F-18s would go a long way toward winning his heart. He told the story repeatedly of how a U.S.-sold missile defense system had knocked down a rocket targeting an airport in Saudi Arabia. So he was trying to, make these sales, but I don't know if the sources misspoke or if Trump is really that dumb to think that, American citizens care about these weapon sales. No, private contractors do. Private contractors want it, and so if he's looking to get their support, he'll have that. By the way, Vietnam is not buying more of our weapons or, defense capabilities or anything like that. But it's just, it's interesting how his mind works or doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, this is so interesting that he thinks the big value that he can offer as a businessman is to transition into a global salesman for military and private contracting firms that are tied to the U.S. government in some sort of way through Goldman Sachs and Boeing, and that this will be appealing to voters. To some degree, I do think it is ludicrous, but to another degree, I do think he does calculate well in understanding how his base forms scripts. Mm-hmm. And this is a script about securitization and the U.S.'s role in leading securitization. And what is always a big win for him is saying that he's going to put more money into the military as if it's proven that we have no resources in our military, even though we quote unquote Trump the next 10 countries below us in terms of military force and expenditures. So this still wins big with his base. Now, the question should be, and the intervention that should be made is why his base, or why people are not seeing that he's just representing big corporations in place of the little guy. Yeah. So I think this is the kind of work that we need to do as people on the margins, on the left, or even people moderate center, instead of looking at his grammar mistakes on Twitter. Is really speaking to that.
Yeah. So just real quick, Ambria, because I know you want to jump in. Back in September, the Trump administration started working on a proposal that would essentially move the issue of weapon sales to foreign countries from the State Department to the Commerce Department. And the whole point of that is to further deregulate weapons manufacturers being able to sell weapons to foreign countries. And so, as you know, a lot of these weapons end up in the hands of our enemies, which is why it's important that the State Department is involved, because they have a pulse on some of these issues, who some of the biggest threats are. The Commerce Department does not deal with our foreign enemies. They deal with commerce. And so it's all about, boosting sales for these weapons manufacturers. I mean, I guess the best export that we have here in the United States is our gun culture. So why not go ahead and sell our guns to other countries? You're right. You look at everything in the context of what's going on, and what it really does is it helps weapons manufacturers. Doesn't really help the American voter. But why is it so hard? Like, why do you have to spell it out? It's like so obvious. Like, don't they sit and think about, oh, how is it going to benefit me if Vietnam buys more of our weapons? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think it's the work that you have to do to kind of get down to those nuggets. And I think there's this tendency, particularly with his voters, to kind of oversimplify this kind of American symbolism, right? Like, American military guns, right? So if you're going to shoot down rockets, you're going to shoot them down with American machinery, right? Yeah. Like, there's something in America equaling this kind of like force, right? So even if all of the other theoretical work that you have to do underneath that argument doesn't make sense, you kind of are just tying together these words, right? American military guns, and that symbolizes America as a force. I feel like when he first got to the first leg of his tour, all he did was talk about America as a force. And this is in somebody else's country, right? So there's a way in which these themes kind of travel with him, and they're very salient with his faith.
Right, and it is part of also his America First messaging, which is anywhere you go, they're going to respect us because we are coming around with guns, trying to force you to buy our weaponry, and I'm going to force the issue of respecting America in ways that we've never been respected before on the global stage, which is, again, just a ridiculous claim to be made, but it speaks to his voters, and the idea of being respected through your gun, as phallic as it may be, does communicate and does resonate with his base. But I would say, like, some points and connections we could make is that not only does militarizing not keep you safe, adding more weapons across the board, it influences people to build up stockpiles as a form of defense that could be easily triggered into war. We've seen that many times throughout history. But the other thing is that those weapons are used in really dramatically brutal ways. Like, we gave Saudi Arabia $110 billion, and they are leading one of the most grotesque wars in Yemen that's turning into one of the worst humanitarian disasters.
We are involved in that war. Absolutely. We are doing drone strikes in Yemen to help Saudi Arabia, which is incredible because some of Trump's most avid supporters were furious about, the relationship that the United States had with Saudi Arabia prior to him getting elected. Well, he got elected, and guess what? He has further emboldened Saudi Arabia. He is extending U.S. military intervention in Yemen. I mean, it's just he has not followed through on a lot of the big issues that his base said that they cared about.
Right. And taking the money and putting American expenditures and putting the big bets on selling weapons and building up our military power means that you're taking from social programs, you're taking from healthcare, you're taking from education. That's why we're deregulating education. That's why we have no money for it, right? And that's why it seems inconceivable to pay towards and repair healthcare. But it actually is conceivable if we are one of the most wealthy nations on this earth. We were just in Portugal, which was one of the poorest countries in Europe and has an incredible healthcare system.
And education system.
I mean, it's something that Martin Luther King said in 1967 in his speech, calling out, condemning the U.S.'s war in Vietnam, which is the amount of money it takes to kill one person in Vietnam is so, like, astronomically huge compared to how little is spent on poor folks in the U.S.
And meanwhile, he affects no change that will actually affect change in the U.S. on this tour, right? There's no bilateral trade agreements, right? He doesn't extract any major concessions from China. He does nothing to arrest the nuclear program in North Korea. Like, all of these things that really matter, none of that gets done. We're talking about guns.
I know, but I mean, he said that it was the best trip that any U.S. president has ever.
It looked fun. It looked really fun because he wasn't working.
Yeah, good. Well, he's talking about golf instead of human rights. Is basically what was said.
All right, let's go back to some happenings here in the United States.
Yeah. Bye.
A sheriff in Georgia has been suspended after the governor, Nathan Deal, decided to suspend him following the sheriff signing off on the search of 900 high school students while police officers were looking for drug paraphernalia. No drug paraphernalia was found. However, these students were on lockdown for hours. Their cell phones were taken away from them, and the searches were much more invasive than what you would expect. And so a grand jury did indict the police officer that I'm talking about, the sheriff. His name is Jeff Hobby, and two deputies in connection with the search at Worth County High School. Hobby faces 2 counts of false imprisonment, 1 count of sexual battery, a charge of violating his oath of office. Now, according to the lawsuit, Hobby arrived at the school with a target list. He's looking for students who have drugs on them. Target list of 13 students that he suspected of having drugs. Only 3 of the listed students were at school that day, and Hobby had them brought to the administrative offices and searched. But that wasn't good enough for him. He decided, no, I want to go ahead and search 900 students. Think about what a gigantic waste of time and resources that is. They didn't find any drugs, no drug paraphernalia whatsoever. Besides which, really, you're going to focus all your attention on this issue? Okay. The lawsuit says Hobby then put the entire school on lockdown. Students were confined to classrooms, hallways, and the gym. Their cell phones were taken away so they couldn't even call their parents. And so this is not looking good because there is a lawsuit filed by the parents of some of these students because they had their genitals touched. In some cases, they had their clothes taken off or certain articles of clothing lifted in front of other students, and it was humiliating. I mean, this is a very clear abuse of power, so much so that the governor of Georgia had to intervene and suspend this guy.
Yeah. I think this is a consequence of our addiction to policing and our addiction to the surveillance state. I mean, and just to even think back to my own high school experience, the fact that we had a cop on campus all the time, that most schools had a list of clothing that you couldn't wear because it was like gang affiliated, right? Like shoelace colors, right?
Yeah, it's funny. At my school, we didn't have like the gang colors or anything, but there was way more emphasis on the way female students dressed, right? And so if we can see your shoulders, you're a harlot, and you must be taken to the principal's office, that kind of stuff. But you're right, like we didn't have a police officer. We had like a really like jolly like security guard guy named Jerry that I have fond memories of. Right? He was really nice, but we never felt like we were on lockdown or being watched. We weren't treated as criminals. And I think when students are treated this way, remember, they're young, their brains are still developing. Yeah. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, I think.
Right. And there's ways. Go ahead. No, I was just going to say it. We had an officer in uniform with his police car right in front of the entrance to the high school. Mm-hmm. So it's already priming our brains to expect that encounter with the police. And that, again, not only criminalized, but you're on your toes because you think that you can possibly do something wrong, right? Whether or not it is suspecting them of drugs they don't have, but putting them in positions where they're made vulnerable and suspected of being a criminal. When this starts young, like you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's also definitely part of a targeted effort to certain schools, like public schools. This doesn't happen at private schools. I don't see this happening at all.
Absolutely, and I'm sure, I guess this all started with a complaint from either a set of parents who were concerned about drugs at the school. If you've narrowed it down to a list of 13 students, you can go talk to them and their parents. I'm sure that's what would have been done if the school were a private school, and that is, an assumption. But there are ways of doing drug sweeps that are lawful, right? So this is both like incompetence and an overreach. So drug sweeps, they bring the dogs in, they don't pull students out of class. You don't interrupt. Students are here to learn.
That's right.
Yeah. Right? So when you interrupt that process, it better be for good reason. This is not good reason. And I just feel like with minors, there's issues of like consent, with their bodies being touched in terms of these searches.
They're minors, exactly.
So it's wildly inappropriate.
So I did a little more digging because I wanted to learn more about this sheriff. I wanted to know if he had, a record of complaints, had he abused his power in the past. And I came across this little kernel of information that I wanted to share with you guys.
Sounds like it's going to be juicy.
It's good. Let's go to graphic 29. The sheriff now stands accused by the local prosecutor of interfering with the criminal investigation into his teenage son, Zachary Lewis Hobby, who's 17. The younger Hobby was arrested on October 9th and charged with felony possession of marijuana with intent to distribute and criminal trespass. Sheriff Hobby and his wife, who is also an employee of the Worth County Sheriff's Office, barged into the room ostensibly to invoke the 17-year-old's Fifth Amendment rights for him. So he got involved.
This is more than juicy.
I mean, come on.
This is like the Republican twist to the story of being against trans rights and then being caught in a bathroom. This is that twist.
Yes.
You needed to be searching your own house for the drugs. That's apparently where they were.
I mean, who knows? And maybe that's the reason why he was so overzealous with these other students. Because maybe he looks at his son and he's like, "Oh, look at what my son got into. It's because of the influence of some other person." So I don't know. I'm doing pop psychology here.
Yeah, but that's parenting. That's not like that's not.
You don't get to abuse your power and treat other students that way. It's amazing. Like he'll stick up for his son, but he'll go ahead and strip search other innocent students who should be on campus to learn. You're absolutely right.
900 students.
A lot of people. All right, we got to take another break. Let's do so. When we come back, more fun stuff for you guys. So make sure you do come back. See you in a minute.
That's crazy.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited.
Did anybody call for it? Editor.
Need this in an hour.
Shared editor too.
Fuck yeah.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay. Not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag one black friend.
I'm thinking more rings.
I got them here.
You need more accessories. Way more accessories.
I don't know where to put them. Come on, throw these on.
Woke bay, not sleep bay. More sexy too. When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour. What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with? No. We need more accessories. We need.
This doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't for your gay audience, man.
Yeah, the gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week.
We have like a kimono or something.
Yeah, that looks good on you, dude.
Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do you have any more?
I got 3
Yeah, can we get more rings on this?
And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles were doing well. I was in.
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have?
Only like 10,000.
So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah 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 social issues. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night.
Dab, mother. Dab.
Okay. okay with that. There you go. There you go. More. Talk about yourself more.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram. This is important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it. So many. She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. It helps the brand. We made you. We got you verified. You're nothing without us.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
Hashtag WokeBay.
Hashtag WokeBay. Please follow me. Please.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. A few TYT lives for you. By the way, guys, my voice is the way it is. People think I'm like smoking during the breaks. I'm not a smoker.
Why is that the thought, you guys?
I don't know. I got laryngitis, and
I can vouch. She had no voice last week.
Yeah, and yeah, it's been hard because I've never gone through this before. But anyway, I'm getting better, I hope. So thank you for your concern. I'm not smoking during the breaks. Control Left says, why would Vietnam need F-18s? I mean, when was the last time someone went to war with them? Such a good point. Heiserberg says, hey, Donnie Tiny Hands, you want to make your approval ratings go through the roof? Quit. Number two, no 2 weeks notice, just quit. Erin Canawell says, absolutely loving the panel of strong women's voices on TYT Live tonight.
Woo! I know. This is great.
Thank you.
We need.
All right, we have two more stories that I definitely want to get to, so let's go right to it. Several prisons and jails throughout the country have switched to a computer system that is beyond faulty. So faulty that after people deal with their arrest warrants, after people are adjudicated and their situation is supposed to go away, the computer system doesn't register it, and then they get badgered and harassed by police officers. And so the latest case has to do with Tennessee. In fact, the Shelby County Correctional Center in Tennessee is facing a class action lawsuit. But this is not the only correctional center facing a class action lawsuit. There are places in California and various other states that used the exact same system and ran into a number of problems. People ended up spending weeks behind bars when they weren't supposed to, sometimes for minor infractions, in most cases after they haven't even been found guilty or convicted of anything. I'll give you one example. This is out of Tennessee. Plaintiff Lakeisha McCoy claims the faulty computer system caused a warrant for her arrest to be acted on multiple times after she paid her bond for an alleged parole violation and was released from police custody. However, the computer system allegedly never registered her release. A few days later, police were back banging on her window, according to the suit, and tried to re-arrest her several times. So there, again, have been complaints about this for quite some time now. The computer system that they're using is known as the Odyssey Case Management System. And the officials at this particular correctional facility were warned that it was deeply flawed and they would run into problems, but they decided to utilize it anyway. And I guess the big selling point is that this computer system is supposed to improve communications with other correctional facilities in other states, but so far we've only seen the downsides.
Yeah, I think that example that you shared points to one of the many downsides, which is just increased police encounters. Like that escalation can be deadly in certain communities, right? So I don't want to be an alarmist about that, but it's a very grave reality. I think also in terms of the lawsuits, citizens are on the hook for this, right? Ultimately, something that could have been remedied, right? Because there were warnings that we end up paying for it, right? But all of these police mistakes, the citizens end up having to pay for it, which is problematic.
And you also pay for, the resources that it takes to keep someone behind bars. Right. By the way, what I read you as an example was bad, but there are cases that are even worse. The computer system registered completely innocent people as sex offenders in some cases.
Wow.
And then also, keep in mind, like, if you're in jail when you are not supposed to be in jail for a week, 2 weeks, you're away from your job. You are away from your family. You could lose your job. In most cases, you will lose your job if that happens. And so it's just devastating for the lives of all these innocent people who dealt with consequences that they didn't deserve. And if the correctional facility was warned ahead of time, and there were stories dating back to 2 years ago that this was going to happen, then why were they so nonchalant about that? Right? You're toying with people's lives. We should have as much thought, and people should be as careful as possible before switching over to a new system, especially when it deals with, the criminal justice system.
Well, because in America, if you are imprisoned or you're convicted or you're arrested, you automatically lose some sense of your citizenship. You're either a second-class citizen or you descend even further down, right? Like if you have a felony, you can't vote anymore. So there's a stigma attached to being a part of the criminal justice system as somebody who has been convicted or criminalized of something, right? So their lives are disposable, right? So they probably didn't even act as quick as they could have in those circumstances where somebody is being supposed to be held for 2 days and then held for 2 weeks. And I'm sure he protested against it, and I'm sure they ignored his claims. And the woman who had already paid bond was repeatedly told to pay for a bond she had paid that long time prior. But again, they're viewed as not trustworthy because they've had this encounter with the criminal justice system. And again, I should just also divulge, because I am actually a prison abolitionist. So I know that takes me to a far left side, but in these sort of circumstances, holding people longer, making them pay, this doesn't solve those issues at hand. It doesn't solve the issue of preventing somebody from coming back into the system and keeping them longer. I mean, this is why Odyssey Case Management System ends up becoming the logic, because they have such a huge tentacle that some sort of system is needed, like you said, to have some sort of coordination, because it's just so massive.
It is. And we do imprison more people than any other country in the world. And our recidivism rate is incredibly high. We have repeat offenders, and it's because a lot of times nonviolent people get locked away, and they learn criminal habits while they're behind bars, because you, unfortunately, in some cases, need those habits to survive, right? I think the most in my opinion, the best example of how society looks at prisoners as throwaways is how Congress, even now, refuses to address the issue of prison rape. Right? They just refuse to address it. They don't care. Right? And I don't know if it's a strong and unfair thing to say that Americans don't care, but prison rape is common. Everyone knows that it happens, and nothing's ever done about it because they're looked upon as untrustworthy as the throwaways of society.
And if you do anything to your jumpsuit, you can be convicted of vandalism to public property.
Yeah,
so I mean, prison is an industry, right?
No, it definitely is one.
Yeah, we benefit from mass incarceration, so we aren't going to do anything to remedy those issues.
Yeah. All right, we have 5 more minutes, and this next story I've been dying to get to, so let's do it. The FDA has approved the first digital pill to be used here in the United States. Now, what does that mean? What is a digital pill? Well, the whole idea behind this is there is a so-called digital component to a prescription drug that would allow your doctor to check in on you and make sure that you are taking your drugs as prescribed. Now, the thought process behind why such a technology would be needed is that in a lot of cases, people don't take their prescription drugs as they're supposed to. They will skip the drug, or they'll skip days, or just stop taking it altogether, and that ends up costing the healthcare system a lot more because their condition will worsen and it'll cost more to treat them. Now, the idea is, well, maybe some people are just forgetting to take their drugs, and this could be a useful tool. And for the moment being, everything is very voluntary. Now, patients who agree to take the digital medication, a version of the antipsychotic Abilify, can sign consent forms allowing their doctors and up to 4 other people, including family members, to receive electronic data showing the date and time pills are ingested. Also, a smartphone app will let them block recipients anytime they change their mind. So this smartphone app also allows them to sign in and talk about how they're feeling at different parts of the day after they take the drug. The technology could potentially be used to monitor whether post-surgical patients took too much opioid medication or clinical trial patients correctly took drugs being tested. So this all has to do with a sensor. It contains copper, magnesium, and silicone. These are all ingredients that are safe and found in foods, and it generates an electrical signal when splashed by stomach fluid. So I wanted to kind of open this up to you guys and get your sense of whether this is a good thing or bad thing. Clearly, there are privacy concerns. That is a concern that I have. And, you know, some insurance companies might also think about giving people discounts if they're willing to sign on to this and allow their doctors to monitor their drug-taking behavior. I find that problematic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, the Black Mirror is not in the future. It's now. It totally is. And it was really interesting that they're starting with schizophrenia patients who have issues of paranoia, thinking somebody's out to get them. I mean, this article was like digital pill Big Brother. And the chairman of psychiatry at Columbia, he said something interesting. He said there's an irony in it being given to people with mental disorders that can include delusions. It's like a biomedical Big Brother. So, I mean, I'm always on the fence around this stuff, especially high-tech solutions that low-tech solutions haven't been thought through. One thing, I went to a functional doctor, or I was inquiring about this functional doctor, and they asked if I could bring somebody with me so I could have an accountability partner as part of my journey towards my medical healing. And so I wonder if that's a different kind of solution that doesn't require people ingesting something and having a sensor that is also attached to a patch that is triggering some sort of app on your phone that you need to be responsible for updating, like, your emotions towards the pill-taking process.
I just feel like, and again, right now everything is super voluntary. This is in its infancy in the U.S., but I just worry about things getting out of hand. It just sounds too invasive to me.
Absolutely. It sounds really invasive. It sounds like a lot of steps. So the folks that it would even help, like elderly folks who need help doing this, they're not going to strap something to themselves and follow an app. And it almost creates another issue. Yeah. So again, it just seems a little problematic.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. And for people who think that this is actually great and it's the future, cool. I just hope it remains voluntary, and I hope that insurance companies don't start, coercing us.
Incentivizing it in ways that...
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching the show. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but if you are a member, there'll be a post-game show for you, so make sure you check that out. If you are not a member, you can join by going to tytnetwork.com/join. And I want to thank the awesome ladies that joined me for the show today. Maitha Al-Hassan, Ambria Allen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so great being with you.
Yeah, I liked it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon.
Hmm.